Well, thank you so much. It is great to see everybody here. How many people from out of town? Oh yeah, love to see that. Okay, so first of all, make sure you spend a lot of money while you're here. Part of my job as governor. We have a lot to see. By the way, we have the best pizza in the world, the best steaks in the world. I know I'm going to start to offend people when I go through this. And some of the best sights that you'll ever see, and I hope you'll get around the city if you haven't already. Thank you very much to Elliot and to the team. Thanks for the kind introduction. Good morning to everybody. Welcome to the greatest city in the greatest country in the world. I really couldn't be happier to welcome you to the Benzinga Cannabis Capital Conference. I know there are deals to be made here, and I don't want to hold you up from doing that. And hopefully there's some learning that goes on along the way. If I add to that, that's just a bonus. But I intend instead just to tell you a little bit about what we've gone through here in Illinois and what I think maybe some advice along the way about what we were able to do that other states might be able to do as well. Since 2018, Benzinga, of course, has gathered entrepreneurs and shareholders and investors alike to push the cannabis industry forward, and that's been hugely important for our state when we legalized cannabis in 2020. And as governor of a state, I share the goal of trying to bring investors and businesses together. Building up commerce is part of my job, and introducing a new industry to our state is part of my job, and I'm thrilled to have been able to do that. And I want to just brag a little bit about our legislature and what we were able to do with our legalization effort. We built out the most equitable, accessible, and prosperous cannabis ecosystem in the nation, and it's one that helps repair our past harms. That was central to the endeavor. And it also creates a more prosperous future for our communities. And during my first 6 months in office, I worked closely with the legislators to enact the most equity-centric cannabis legislation in the nation. It's called the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, and it solidified Illinois' status as the first state to legalize adult use cannabis through legislation. Everybody else before us had done it with a referendum. And that meant that it was a bit of a free-for-all and a very quick endeavor to try to put together legislation that would help regulate the industries in so many other states. Ours was years in the making by the legislature, very carefully done with a lot of input from the public and industry players and a lot of listening. And since then, Illinois has become home to some of the largest cannabis companies in the nation, on top of creating more than 30,000 jobs for Illinoisans. But I know that progress isn't possible without accountability. We couldn't just legalize cannabis and say that our work was done. We had to address the trauma inflicted by the war on cannabis and the war on drugs more broadly, which incarcerated countless nonviolent offenders and tore apart families and neighborhoods in the process. So what did we do? We expunged over 800,000 low-level marijuana possession charges. And I personally pardoned tens of thousands of people who had been convicted. So it's arrests and convictions, over 800,000 people whose lives have been made better. We opened up doors for many Illinoisans, mostly people of color, to finally get a job or to rent an apartment that they were previously denied because of the record, the thing that sat on their record, that check the box that you had to do when you would go apply for a job or an apartment. They no longer need to do. And we're simultaneously taking the revenue from this new industry and we're investing it in the communities that were previously harmed. Through the Restore, Reinvest, and Renew in Illinois to community organizations dedicated to civil legal aid, to economic development, to reentry from the criminal justice system, to violence prevention and youth development. And already more than $144 million has gone back into communities that need it most and into hundreds of organizations that push us forward, from the Illinois Prison Project to the Westside Justice Center to a Safe Haven Foundation. So many local organizations that have been in need, honestly, have now seen the benefit of this legislation. But that's not all. While in many states, legalization of cannabis has produced a multi-billion-dollar industry that lacks diversity and is dominated by an oligopoly of only corporations and really only high net worth individuals. Here in the land of Lincoln, we're trying to do things differently. We're attempting to produce a cannabis industry that is reflective of our overall goal of achieving genuine equity. That's why we established the Cannabis Social Equity Program, ensuring that those who've been historically impacted by the war on drugs have the opportunity to take part in and benefit from our cannabis industry. From access to financial resources to training programs at our local colleges, our social equity licensees are given the tools that they need to succeed, with the goal of transforming lives and improving our cities and our state. And we've made tremendous strides forward with more to do. When we reinvest in the potential of our people, we invite economic activity that creates resilience. And when we renew hope in communities historically left out and left behind, we inspire the next generation to pursue a brighter future. And in public service, well, that's our obligation, to make sure that we're creating opportunity for people who may previously have never had it. And I couldn't be prouder that so far nearly 50 social equity licensees have opened their doors for business in Illinois, from Chicago all the way to Mount Vernon in southern Illinois. And I want to just give an example of a great company here in Chicago called Ivy Hall Dispensary in Bucktown. Ivy Hall has a story that's as Illinois as it gets. It's a story rooted in family. A powerhouse father-son duo, John and Nigel Dandridge, have worked day in and day out to operate their dispensary, and in a very, very diverse community that it serves. And it's become the first social equity business to open its doors, with many others that have now followed. And since then, we've seen craft growers, transporters, and other small businesses owned by folks from every walk of life open their doors in an industry that still has plenty of room to grow. You know, I always was concerned at the very beginning that there were people complaining that we didn't just open up the number of licensees to everybody that wanted to open their doors and go into this industry, concerned only that, you know, were we handling the management of this, this new industry the right way? It's not usual that the government is really creating or starting or opening the door for a brand new industry that the world really hadn't seen. And so I have to say that we did the right thing. And we're still managing through that, and there are people who still complain that we ought to have more and more licenses issued daily. And the reality is that by holding back, we've really left a portion of the market still available for social equity license holders, so that when they enter the industry, they enter it in a profitable way. I'm proud of that. It would be easy to just allow existing systems rooted in tradition to leave people out. It would just be easy to do it the old-fashioned way, to come into existence as they always have. It's much, much harder to build something that is making a difference and pushing against the grains of the past. But that's what we're doing here in Illinois, and I'm proud of it. Creating an industry that lives up to our values of transformative justice, of equity and representation. Investing in and building businesses is what I did before I became governor. And so thinking about how entrepreneurs build their businesses and how we need to create this is something that wasn't far from my mind. So I know that the job one for me and for our state is always to focus on growth and profitability. But here in Illinois, we can also accomplish that while proudly paving a future that makes a real difference for people and a difference in the world, and hopefully setting an example. Thank you. Repairing harm visited upon people of color, the formerly incarcerated, visited upon people who've been left out and left behind of any background. These are some of the most important aspects of our cannabis industry. It's also some of the most important work that we have to do as a state. So let me express my gratitude to those of you who invest in social equity-owned businesses who are in need of, the businesses that are most in need of capital to get up and running. And hopefully we've created an environment here in Illinois where the opportunity is still great for people who want to enter this industry, again, who've been left out before. They're in need of capital to get up and running, and let me point out to all of the investors in here that helping you prosper, helping the businesses that you back prosper is part of my job. I think about it all the time for all businesses in Illinois. We have a lot of social goals that we need to reach along the way, but we've balanced those things, I think, properly, and the result of it is thriving businesses, growing industry, and new dispensaries that can open profitably, not to mention the growers, the transporters, and all of the other parts of the industry that people often don't focus on. So I want to thank all of you. Thanks to Benzinga for the work that you've done. I know it's been a long time building the business of Benzinga. For many of you, I hope that the work that they do, because I see it from afar as I read the work that Benzinga puts out, that you see the benefit of connecting with one another and coming to a great place like Chicago to get to know each other and do deals together. So glad to be here with all of you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for having your conference in the greatest city in the country.
What about the migrant situation? I know there's a fundraiser today for the DNC. By next summer, what do you think the city is going to look like? And how is the state helping this crisis?
Well, we've been working closely with the city to assist them in all their efforts. As you may have seen recently, when you add up everything that we've put forward, about $328 million from the state to assist in the management of the asylum seekers that have come to Illinois. They're being sent here at an increasing rate recently, which is disturbing. Shows yet again that the Republican governor and the various mayors in Texas that want to cause problems for other cities continue to try to do that. But we're managing through. There are an awful lot of challenges, as you know. It's not just about housing, but also providing food and clothing and health care. But the most recent moves by the White House are an enormous benefit. There's more to do, but they will have it. Sorry?
What are those moves? Because
thousands and thousands of people will get work authorizations as a result of what the White House did recently. People, and listen, almost all of these migrants would like to work. They would like an opportunity to go earn their own living, pay their own way in the world. They're asking for jobs, and the employers are asking for employees. We have a work shortage, labor shortage in the state. So this works well to match, and we're working hard to identify those who are eligible and then identify the jobs that are available and the skills that are necessary and put those two together over the next number of weeks.
So staying on the subject of the migrants, how comfortable are you with the state continuing to be in multi-million-dollar contracts with Garda World, given their concerns that were raised about the treatment of migrants elsewhere in the contract, whether or not it's active with the state of Florida to move migrants out of the state of Florida, and how comfortable are you with the city of Chicago using that contract to set up this tent encampment?
We have not yet used that contract that you're talking about at the state level. It's certainly available for cities and counties and others at the local level. But this is something that's only something that gets used in the case of an emergency. That's why it resides at IEMA, the Illinois Emergency Management Agency. And there aren't many companies that provide the kinds of services. Remember, what we're looking at mostly is we don't have the kinds of facilities that they can provide that in an emergency, right? We have some, but not enough when you have a major undertaking like the city has. So they're assisting in that endeavor. And again, I have concerns about, and I've talked to the city about how these base camps would be created. But having said that, the city is on the front lines and dealing with it as best they can, and we want to provide them access to whatever we can to make it
With
easier.
all due respect, the mayor of El Paso, he's a Democrat. He's the one who sent the migrants up because they're getting 2,000 a day there.
Yeah.
Not enough room on the street, so everyone's got to share the pain. Why not open up McCormick Place East or any of those hospitals that you had for COVID that were never filled?
Well, to be clear, we are providing facilities as best we can across the city while also making sure that we can continue to keep commerce going and everything else. I will say that I think that the mayor of El Paso needs to listen to the cities that he's sending folks to and start thinking about whether or not this ought to be spread across the country. Why is he not sending anybody to Idaho, Wyoming?
Because they're not sanctuary cities, they're sanctuary states.
That's not why they're doing it. That is not why they're doing it. You know that they're they're doing it because they're sending them to areas where they think that people will take care of them and where people will put the resources forward because this is a humanitarian crisis. But the reality is that states that are controlled by Republicans ought to be offering the same services. We all are immigrants. Virtually everybody in the United States is an immigrant. And many people, including my relatives who arrived here 150 years ago, got very little help, but a little bit of help from local social service agencies like we're helping to provide for them here in Chicago now. So I just want to be clear that Chicago, you can use whatever words to describe. We are a city and a state that cares deeply about people who are living through a humanitarian crisis. That is why people are sending folks here. And we're doing everything we can, but we need more help from the federal government, and we need more help overall to solve for this.
I know the state is helping financially, but what are you guys doing immediately to find shelter throughout the state for all these migrants that are coming into Chicago? I mean, they're still at the police stations. I mean, when I talked to the city, they said, there really aren't that many, cities outside of Chicago that are in play here to take migrants.
Yeah, but these people are coming to Chicago, so this starts out as a challenge for the city of Chicago. It's certainly a challenge for everybody in Illinois. It should be thought of as a challenge for the country. The city has received not just resources from the state, but people, personnel, and a whole lot of effort over the last year. Let me give you an example. We, of course, rented out motel rooms initially as we saw a huge influx of folks in August, September, October, November of last year. And that worked for a little while. It doesn't work well for providing all the services that are necessary. And so we've moved off of that and instead are assisting in every other way we can. But, if you've got buildings available, and I hope that cities will raise their hands and offer assistance. We have provided grant opportunities for cities that will do that, and it's a voluntary endeavor. We're not going to do that unless a city asks us to.
But as a city,
We already have.
And are you helping facilitate any type of shelter outside of the city of Chicago?
When you say facilitate, absolutely, we're helping in every way we can, but you can't just create facilities from nothing, right? I mean, the city is attempting to do that by using Garda-World, but the reality is you've got to find buildings that have facilities for people to use restrooms and other things that will work well and that aren't too very far away from the services that these folks need. So when you think about, let's just move them into the wide open spaces of rural Illinois, that's not going to happen because these folks do need help. And those kids need to go to schools, and some of those schools are not big enough to be able to handle the number of kids.
You mentioned concerns about base camps.
What do you think about the base camps? I mean, what do you think is a good idea?
I've expressed my concerns about it, and we continue to have conversations about it. I mean, I think it's something that the city, with a lack of existing buildings, to put people in. I know the city has looked at this as one of its options, but I don't think this is the only option. And again, we're attempting to identify other facilities that are already built where we could house migrants.
What are the
Governor,
concerns?
last
You
night
didn't
you
really
were-
say, what are the concerns
You were
about
following,
Just that if we have existing facilities, we ought to use all of those that are willing to do it. Including, by the way, if there are federal opportunities to do that, great. There are federal buildings that don't have anybody in them. We haven't identified any yet, and the federal government hasn't yet. But we've asked them, even if even if it's something that's a bit inconvenient for the federal government, they need to step up to the plate. And I've said that repeatedly to the Department of Homeland Security.
it sure seemed as if last night you were watching the Republican debate. Do you wish that you were part of the DeSantis versus Newsom in November?
It seems like I was watching the how to.
Out from your tweets.
I could just say this. It continues to be a smorgasbord of extremists. They continue to espouse these ideas that have absolutely no place in American society. And these are folks who have no ability to lead this country. Joe Biden has proven that he's willing to work across the aisle to get big things done for people.
Would you like to be part of that November content between Newsom and DeSantis?
Joe Biden is going to be the next president, as he is our current president, and he's done a tremendous job.
Well, perhaps they're looking at 28. Would you like to be thought of in that group?
Well, I'm not looking at 28. I'm looking at being governor of the state of Illinois. I love this job.
Governor, to your previous point about the federal government, you said continuously you've reached out to the federal government for financial assistance and intervention on the migrant crisis. Outside of streamlining the work permits, what are those leaders specifically action items? What are they going to do? What are your conversations with the president, with the federal government about helping the city of Chicago?
Well, they have the ability to help us, and they've offered to help, and so we're going to accept whatever it is that they can offer. I will say that it's not just about money, though, frankly, we do need reimbursement for the dollars that have already been put forward, because we've done an awful lot already without a lot of help from the federal government.
Thanks, everybody. We got it.
I just want to, just to finish the answer, it's not just about money, right? It is also about making sure that we get personnel from the federal government, because this process, and you can see a little bit of it in New York, we're doing it here in Chicago and organizing it. It involves immigration attorneys. It involves filing paperwork for people that haven't already filed paperwork. It involves making sure that we're identifying people's skills and the jobs that they can fulfill when they get the work authorizations. So there's a lot that the federal government can help us with along the way. We're doing it on our own now, but I have asked the department.
They said they'll help.
They have, and the Department of Homeland Security and the White House have both heard from me on this subject.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Shut down.